Hi folks, I'm Ben. I'm a principal engineer at Humanitec, and today I'm going to be showing a demo of the upcoming Humanitec pipelines features and how they allow you to promote changes between environments and do more secure and more kind of policy-driven uh, deployments in Humanitec. Today we're looking at a sample repository I've created. It contains a simple Docker application that contains just an Nginx web server and a kind of hello world HTML page. We're going to be deploying this into a Humanitec app, and we've got a score file which defines a basic like how this will be deployed in Humanitec with a web server, some ports, some ingress rules, things like that. Just enough to demonstrate it, and then a pipeline definition file which we'll be coming back to. So as a platform engineer in Humanitec, setting up an application for my team. I'm creating a new application, my app, and we're going to allow our developers to kind of deploy into the basic development application here. Switching over into a terminal where I have this basic Docker image, we can make sure that we publish the, let's do a tag speed1, make publish. We're going to publish the first version of our web app image. And this is going to help us get our initial score. So that's our artifact registered. And now we're going to do our score-based deployment. I've deployed my score YAML with that container image as v1. So this is how you would interact with Humanitec today, doing a deployment, getting out a workload with a DNS name that we can look at now, and iterating on that. However, what we want to do is have multiple environments. So if we go to our production environment, which we're going to clone from development, we can set that up, make sure we deploy the current software to it. You can see this deployment is happening within a default pipeline that we've set up for the app for the user's behalf. But we can go back to development for now and follow along on our web upload. Great. If we look at our DNS route for our development app, we can see that we've got a Humanitec pipelines example with a basic message in it. And we can do the same for production. Oops, this one is display unhealthy. Let's have a look. Right, so we've got a development and production. Now the challenge that users of Humanitec will have, or developers will have, is how to safely promote changes between these environments in a policy-driven way with things like integration tests performed, security tests, and anything, and maybe manual approvals and the like. So we're going to demonstrate that today. We have a pipeline section available today. Now, the initial pipeline that we were using for those default deployments was this deployed pipeline. But for now, we're going to create a new one. I've prepared a block of YAML here today, and this contains a number of different things. Firstly, if we go back to our Humanitec pipelines repo, we have some GitHub actions defined. We have some integration tests, which we'd like to run on our development environment. We've got a policy enforcer that we'd like to run before we deploy to production. Right now, these are dummy actions that just kind of echo a message, but you could make these do very complex things like checking container vulnerabilities, checking other kinds of security rules and hardening against containers, or just simply running complex integration tests before you promote. If we go back to our pipeline, we're doing what's called an image-based pipeline. This is the same as previously we had automation rules in Humanitec. Now we have a more powerful abstraction of image-triggered pipelines. So we have a trigger on our web app image, and that's going to kick off this pipeline. So our developers will no longer need to log into Humanitec, make any API calls against Humanitec. All they need to do is trigger their CI pipeline, which will send a notification to Humanitec about a new image, and this pipeline will trigger. I won't go into too much depth about what this pipeline does for the sake of time, but we have a number of different steps demonstrated here. We have converting our image into a delta. We have applying that delta to an environment to create a deployment set and deploying that. We call out to a GitHub workflow, wait for that to finish, passing custom arguments into it. We have a Slack notification, which will go to this Slack window here, and that will simulate notifying our developer team of a failed test or notifying our QA engineers of a promotion that needs to be applied or a release that needs to be created. And then we've got a separate job in the pipeline which clones that development deploy into production, runs our integration test, or our policy enforcer rather, and waits for a manual approval. Now, you may have seen that we've got an integration with GitHub there to run an action. So I'm going to register a secret in my application here. And this will be used to trigger those automations. So now I've set this up as a platform engineer, and now we can look at what this may look like from the developer's perspective. If we go back to our terminal here, and we look at our index.html, let's simulate a change that we might want to deploy. Instead of hello world, we want to write hello Ben, my name. Let's save that. And we can now do our same Docker build and publish with v2 of our image. Now, this would rather be done by your CI pipeline, obviously, and the notification sent to Humanitec. But I've done it here in the terminal as an example. If we look at our pipelines, you can see that the promotion pipeline was immediately triggered with a new image. I opted for no batching here, so the pipeline's kicked off immediately. And if we look at it, we can see that it has prepared that new image delta. It's deploying it to development. So we converted it, we deployed it to development, and sorry, this ran quite quickly because it's very lightweight. It ran a GitHub workflow and then began deploying to production. I can confirm that here with the integration tests workflow ran that kicked off and finished. And now we have our production run. In production, it started triggering the policy enforcer. It ran that. It then notified our Slack webhook that we can see here. So we have two messages, one showing that deploy and test in development succeeded, and the other saying that it's currently waiting for approval of this pipeline run. So right now, the last step in this pipeline is that approval, a manual approval. We're currently waiting on the approvals UI to be implemented in our production. So for now, I'm going to unblock this approval through an API call. And that's kind of representative of what you could do in a production setting or integrating with a different developer platform. You might have this approval webhook triggered by a button in the Slack notification. But I can do that, and immediately it starts continuing our deployment to production. Again, to deploy into our production. If we quickly look at our developer environment, we've got Hello Ben. And if we look at our production environment, it's also been upgraded to Hello Ben. So that's an example of how you can integrate with your Slack webhooks, your GitHub your Slack webhooks, your GitHub workflows, and keep your kind of team in sync with what's going on in your pipelines without anyone needing to log into Humanitec whatsoever. One time where you may need to log into Humanitec is when you are rolling back to a previous version. For example, if we have our production app and someone has declared that this is actually the wrong content, we need to roll back to the previous content. We don't want to wait for our entire development flow to run before we can roll back. So if I go to my production environment, I want to roll back to this previous deployment here. To roll back, we're going to click our redeploy button. We don't want to redeploy the same version. We want to redeploy version 1, which was our initial deployment. You can see the confirmation in the diff here. I'm going to work around a small issue here by pasting in our target deployment set and doing our redeploy. And here, this is running our bespoke redeploy pipeline for this application and quickly hotfixing back. So we can see production has now been rolled back to Hello World, while our development environment still shows that original content. And we can then, as a team, edit our file if we wanted to and roll out a new fixed image in that way. Now, there's a lot of possibilities with what you can do here in terms of these pipeline steps. The GitHub actions I ran as an integration here are very, very basic, but if we look at our pipeline syntax that we executed, you can see that passing additional arguments into these workflow steps or formatting these Slack notifications in any way you need can be very powerful. So we can pass lists of images in, we can pass links to those deltas and diffs that need to be checked before deployment, and all kinds of things like that. We aim to slowly improve this pipeline's UI over time as we get feedback from customers and as we use it ourselves at Humanitec to make more and more integrated functionalities possible. Okay, so today we looked at a number of different features using pipelines. We showed how you can build quite a complex pipeline to promote between environments triggered by our images of developers pushing new images and integrating with external systems like Slack, GitHub, and any other web-based applications that you may have as part of your continuous delivery procedure. We hope that this can be a powerful addition to the way you work with Humanitec. Thanks very much.